Welcome everyone to the first session of UDL Express Move into Accessibility. So this summer, we're organizing the series around the MOVE framework, which stands for meaning, organization, versatility, and engagement. Now, we're intentionally starting with meaning because MOVE is a purpose-first framework. So before we think about formatting, structure, or tools, we need to ask, what is this material trying to communicate? And how will learners understand its purpose clearly? And to give us some context, I wanted to briefly highlight two findings from the 2026 WebAIM Million Report, which analyzed the accessibility of the top 1 million homepages. Now, the report found that 15.2% of pages contain ambiguous link text like click here or read more, and 53.1% of homepages had images missing alternative text. Now, these examples point to an important accessibility issue. When meaning is unclear, your users or your learners may have to guess what to do with the information. So they may have to try and figure out, where is this link going to take them? Or how does this image contribute to the discussion? So meaning matters because accessibility is not only about access to the content, it's about understanding what to do with the content. So what actually creates meaning? So meaning in digital course materials often created through signals that help learners understand the purpose and the action. So in other words, we're trying to help learners understand what something is, why it matters, and what to do with it. On the slide, we are comparing examples where we're working with different types of materials, and we're giving an example of when something has less meaning and when it has more meaning. So for example, when you're providing links, the words click here doesn't explain where somebody is going if they select that link. Whereas if for the link, you've hyperlinked the text, download week 3 readings PDF, it communicates to the users the destination and the file type. If the buttons just say submit, but there are multiple buttons on the same page, I may not be sure where I'm submitting what. So it's functional, but still vague. However, if it says something like submit the reflection assignment, it actually provides clear direction. Images with no context doesn't really communicate the purpose of having that image. But when you add a contextual description or label or caption, it helps the user understand what are they doing with that image. And then finally, thinking about the organizational elements such as file names, headings, and module titles. Now, how many of us are guilty of having file names that's like week 3, final, final, 2, real final.pdf, right? For your users, they're not quite sure, like, is this really the final? You said final twice now. But if it just says week 3 lecture slides.pdf, they know when they're clicking on that, they're downloading the lecture slides. Same thing with things like headings. More information might be relevant, but maybe saying things like assignment expectations makes it very clear for the learner who's on the Quarkus assignment page that, oh, this part is about expectations. I need to pay attention to this. And things like module titles, love that lots of instructors are using module titles like week 4. But maybe you could remind them like, hey, what are we talking about in week 4? Or maybe this is just one page within the week 4 module. So this page is talking about research and evidence. How to improve meaning. Now, one thing to emphasize in this area is that meaning requires human judgment. Accessibility checkers can often identify missing alt text, empty links, missing caption, but they're not going to be able to recognize other things like whether or not a description is meaningful in context. An accessibility checker won't be able to check whether a heading communicates purpose. For them, the fact that you use headings, the accessibility checker will be like, hooray. But then if your heading is just more, well, more what? Similarly, buttons should clearly signal an action so that the learners can understand what to do next. So how do you help yourself enhance meaning? You can ask yourself, can my learners and users predict what will happen? Is the purpose of the element actually clear? And does it make sense on its own? When I take that heading out of context, would I still know that, oh, this page is about week 4, research and evidence? And the way to do this is really start small and prioritize. I like to think about like what are the core navigational pieces I need in my document or my Quirkus page that my learners will probably be seeking, and I try to fix those first. Things like high stakes assignments, I want to make sure information for high stakes assignments are very, very clear. And things like frequently used materials, such as your syllabus. Well, I hope your syllabus is a frequently used materials, but maybe it's the calendar or the rubric, or it's a Microsoft Forms where you ask students to submit their individual reflection every week. You want to make sure those elements are very clear. To give us some tangible strategies, I identify 4 things we can do. For links and buttons, think about, are you using descriptive text? Are you indicating file types or actions? Because downloading a video file in MP4 is not the same as downloading a Word document. Second strategy is images and icons. Add contextual alt text or labels and mark decorative images as decorative. For captions and media, if possible, review your auto captions and provide transcripts when appropriate. And then finally, organization and navigation. Check if you're using meaningful file names. And then write clear headings and module titles so that it really helps your users understand why are they here and what can they do with this information. So, our big takeaways for today. First, make your purpose obvious. It might be obvious to you, the designer, but is it obvious to your users and learners? Second, reduce learner guesswork. And then finally, meaning supports understanding and navigation so that there could be more engagement with the content, with the activities.